welcome to Mendo Seed Talk. So this is a new program to help introduce our community to seed saving. And my name is Jen, and I'm from the Ukiah Library, and I'm the Ukiah Library Seed Library Coordinator. So, and with me today is Carolyn Brown, and she's a local ag and garden educator and seed saver. And we'll be talking about corn today. And I want you to also notice that today we both have our masks on. Even though we're outside and we're trying to maintain social distancing, we are very aware that wearing a mask really helps with controlling the spread of COVID-19. That said, we're gonna take a look at corn today.
Well, and also we wanted to thank North Coast Opportunities for helping to fund and put this video on. We're trying to just do some very short educational videos that show you ways you can save your own seed of varieties that may be your favorite or varieties that are regionally adapted to Mendocino County. And I know Jen has gotten a lot more involved again with gardening because of COVID, and I increased the size of my home garden. And we just want to share with you simple hands-on things you can do to help make your gardening experience more successful. So today we're talking about saving corn seeds.
So this garden didn't exist in April, but in May we put it in because my family and I were concerned about food security. But beyond that, we were also concerned about seed security. And so I wanted to be able to grow more seed for the seed library. And so I put in beans and corn and squash, mainly calorie type crops that I could share with the community so that we can help other people grow food for themselves too.
And the other thing about just having a big garden and being more self-reliant is that honestly it just helps us stay home and being safe, kind of limiting contact by having to go grocery shopping as much. And that's just another thing that we can do to stay safe during this time is really frequent hand washing and staying home as much as possible. And what better?
So I haven't grown corn in a long time, Carolyn, and I've only grown sweet corn. I've never grown like dry corn or corn for making like cornmeal and tortillas and masa and polenta. And so this year I grew 3 varieties of corn. One is a fresh eating corn that we're standing in front of, and it's called Astronomy Domini. And then I have 2 other varieties that are for drying corn. And so
corn is a warm season crop. You need to wait until the soil and the ambient air temperature is warm enough to plant it. If you plant it too early when the soil is cold, the seed will rot. And then they're very susceptible to frost. So a good planting date is right around Mother's Day. So yeah, corn is a heavy feeder. And you were telling me, I wanted to find out more what you did to amend your soil.
Okay.
So to look so beautiful.
So this early spring, I knew that I needed to present as much garden information to the library patrons as I possibly could. And so I watched a lot of videos and read a lot of books, and I got really turned on to a guy named Charles Dowding, and he's an English gardener, but he does no-till. And so this is the experiment. We did not till this garden. We just laid down cardboard, and we brought in compost from one of our compost companies here locally, and we put down compost. And
how thick of a layer?
Ideally it was 3 inches.
Yeah, and you put it right on top of the cardboard.
Right on top of the cardboard. And we would put in amendments like I use for nitrogen, for a fast, high nitrogen source. I just use what's called feedstock, and it's alfalfa pellets. It's not the kind you would feed to rabbits because that has salt in it, but it's the kind you would feed to horse and cattle. And it's really inexpensive, and you can get it organic. You can also get it as just meal, but it's easier to get it in the pelletized form. And so I spread that. Sometimes I spread that on the ground before I put the cardboard down, and then I put it. And there's drip irrigation, which you can see on this corn bed. We use a T-tape to irrigate in our gardens. So, and that cuts down on evaporation, and it's a better way to, more sustainable way to water your gardens rather than overhead watering.
And you planted your corn in blocks. So, and planting in blocks, because corn is wind pollinated, that helps the ears pollinate well.
Yeah. I did a little hand pollinating, because that was another thing I learned about watching videos this early spring. So I would come down in the morning and shake the pollen is up here in the male part of the plant, and the female part is down here in these silks, and the pollen has to get from here to here. And I would come out and I would shake the plants every morning, and I would see the drifts of pollen. So at this time there's no more pollen left, and you can see that the silks are drying down. So now it's time, I'm harvesting this corn. And this is not the typical sweet corn that you would buy in the grocery store. It's starchier and less sweet, and it's one of those ones that you can't put it in the refrigerator and expect it to be sweet next week. It's not a super sweet hybrid. It is an heirloom variety, and so you have to eat it right away. And that's how you harvest corn. And so I saved this one because
it's gorgeous.
Look at that.
That's your sweet corn?
That's a sweet corn.
Oh my goodness.
And
does it stay that beautiful color when you cook it?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So this is what's so much fun about growing heirloom varieties, is that you look at the variation that I'm getting. So that's why I like growing heirlooms, because it's more like Christmas. It's more of a surprise. There's more variation. It's more exciting.
And this is interesting because this looks a lot like the Indian corn.
Mm-hmm.
And there are 5 classifications of corn. There's a flint corn, there's the part of the seed that feeds the little developing plant. It's called the endosperm. And it feeds the little developing embryo. And in flint corn, that endosperm is very firm and hard, and you can use flint corn for grinding. Popcorn is a type of flint corn. And then there is flour corn, which is typically used for making cornmeal and corn tortillas, like a blue tortilla corn that I've been growing out for over 30 years. Dent corn, which has a combination of soft and firm endosperm, and so it makes a little dent or a little dimple right in the top, and that is also used for grinding. And then sweet corn, the endosperm does not change to starch. It stays as a sugar, and that's why you have the sweeter flavor. And then when it dries, they just shrivel up and get all wrinkly. When you're harvesting corn seed to save for seed, or to use as a flour corn or a popcorn, you wait until the whole husk turns brown, and really until the entire plant turns brown. Bring that in. You need to protect it from rodents and blue jays and things, but you'll need to peel back the husk and then either pack it loosely into very porous, breathable sacks and hang them and pack them in loosely, or bunch them together and hang them in a secure place where those little critters won't beat you to it. And wait until it becomes very dry. Here's a beautiful example. This is so gorgeous. This is this one.
No, it's Montana lavender clay.
Look at how beautiful. And is this a flint corn?
Yes, and the cross pollination that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. So right there,
and probably right here,
some outcrossing. So I would not save those seeds.
So when the pollen falls from the tassel, it falls on one of these little silk, and this is the part of the flower called, it has a sticky stigma on the end and a long style that goes down to the ovary, and the ovary is what develops into the seed, and then parts of the ovary into the fruit. And corn is actually a fruit, not a grain. So each one of these was individually pollinated. So that is pollen from a different, like Jen said, a different variety.
Nice to see that there are these gaps so we can explain what happened there. So there were kernels, there were the ovum or the ovary to turn into kernels, but the pollen didn't touch one of those fine silks that was attached there, and so pollination didn't occur, and that's why you see some gapping happening on that one.
Yeah, it's really cool to know that you can save the seed that you want, that has the characteristics of the plant you are trying to save, and just discard the individual ones and not discard the entire.
So corn is wind pollinated, and the pollen itself is fairly heavy, so it doesn't travel great distances. But if you want to be certain that you're saving and keeping that particular variety pure, you would need to have your corn be at least 800 feet or a half a mile from other large concentrations of corn.
And I broke all the rules. I grew 3 kinds of corn, so there is another way to separate and time your corn so that they're blooming. As long as it's blooming at a different time, you're okay. So I planted this so they would all, I looked on the seed packet to see what the date to maturity was, and so I planted the shortest maturity time first, and then subsequently later and later.
Make sure it's completely mature, because the point at which we eat sweet corn is when it's milky. And you want that milky kernel to start to firm up and really mature for a viable seed. So you'll want to run the water longer. But when you see the corn itself starting to turn, the wrapper starting to turn brown, and the plant beginning to look like it's going into that die down phase, turn the water off at that point.
Okay.
But leave the plant standing till all the nutrients have gone into the developing seed and it's dry. You have to watch it closely though, because everybody else is looking at that corn of
Yeah, I
yours.
was going to ask you. So
don't
what
want
kind of pests should I worry about?
Well, at night, raccoons, rodents, they love it during the day, the blue jays,
And the crows.
and the crows. So you'll just need to keep an eye on it, and when it is dry, like this ear of corn was, take it, pull the husks back, and then continue to dry it down in a safe place, like in a burlap bag tied up somewhere out of reach of little marauders, and let it dry down completely. Once it's completely dry and you press on it, it doesn't feel it all soft.
Right.
You can shell it and then store it in an airtight container.
I brought one of these. This is
Oh.
a great shelling device, and it's super fast.
You can shell on one of these baskets.
Yeah. Brought one for you too.
Right.
So not knowing what this corn is, I mean it's a dent corn probably, but it can be ground. It can be popped, or it can be ground for flour.
And I'm just loosening the little bits of the cob that are still around it. You can just pour the It's not quite windy enough today to get that chaff to blow away. So you can also just use a shallow dish and then blow on it to get all these small little bits of chaff.